Today I'm going to tell you all why we are watching the greatest baseball season of all time. Welcome to everyone's favorite segment, This Week in Shohei Ohtani News. Let's talk about what we have seen so far this year from Shohei. He is on pace to have by far the greatest baseball season that we have ever seen. He leads the National League in OPS while also leading the National League in ERA. Look no further than that, but we can go much further. Christopher Sanchez, who just had one of the best months on the mound as a starting pitcher ever. Scoreless inning streak of 50 2/3 innings, longest scoreless inning streak by a left-handed starter ever. His ERA is 50% higher than Shohei Ohtani's ERA as we currently sit. He's on pace to have a 13.55 WAR. If you're not huge into WAR, you don't exactly know what that means, that is perfectly okay. Let me put it into perspective for you. That is more than the entire roster that the Rockies and the Nationals combined for in 2025. Last player with 13.5 WAR was Babe Ruth in 1923. So I say that for a reason. If you love statistics, that one shows you exactly what you need to. If you don't, that's the beauty with Shohei. I don't need WAR to tell me how good Shohei Ohtani is. I can see it. I can see it with my own two eyes. But every stat you could possibly imagine backs it up and backs up how good he is. Through 10 starts this year, 5 earned runs given up. He just had his 11th start on the year. We're going to talk about his offense and his pitching in the 11th start. But through 10 starts, 5 earned runs. That's it. 5 earned runs total. Same amount of home runs hit this year as runs allowed leading into this most recent start. 150 sweepers he threw in the month of May. He threw 150 sweepers and gave up just one hit. One hit in 150 pitches. It is the most unhittable pitch in the game of baseball. 286 on the year leading into his most recent start, only 4 hits total for a batting average of 0.070. That is unbelievable. 3 runs given up the entire month of May with 18 RBIs. That means 6 times more runs driven in than runs given up in the entire month. So on both sides of the ball, we are seeing, I know he's a designated hitter, and that would make it harder to win the MVP as just a DH. We have seen him do it before. But what we are seeing offensively, take the pitching out of it. We are seeing an MVP year offensively for Shohei Ohtani. Period. Take the offense out of it. We are seeing a Cy Young year for Shohei Ohtani on the mound. Put those two together, and the fact that they are happening at the exact same time is truly tough to believe. And I'm not sure people would believe it if you flash back 10 years ago and say, this is going to be happening into June of 2026. People will be like, no, there's no way that's happening. But here we are, and I do This Week in Shohei Ohtani News every day, the day after he pitches, to just keep it in everybody's mind what we're seeing. Never take for granted what we are seeing. Through 10 starts, 3rd lowest ERA in history, in Major League Baseball history, through 10 starts. With the lowest ERA, he has the lowest WHIP. He has the lowest opponent batting average. Since 1 month ago, he leads Major League Baseball in OPS, in slugging percentage, in on-base percentage, in batting average. And during that stretch, he had 4 starts and gave up just 1 run before this most recent start. That's a 0.38 ERA in 4 starts. So what we are seeing right now, again, on both sides of the ball, is an MVP caliber offensive year and a Cy Young caliber pitching year. And we're seeing those happen at the exact same time. Shohei Ohtani has an OPS higher than everyone in the National League and the lowest ERA in all of Major League Baseball. And that, my friends, is why we are currently witnessing the greatest Major League Baseball season of all time. And in fact, I would actually say the greatest Major League Baseball season we had ever seen was Shohei a few years ago. because of the fact that he's doing both. I have talked about it a little bit on this show, but you want to compare Babe Ruth? Sure. That's kind of the only comparison people have to go off of. Babe Ruth wasn't pitching and hitting at an elite level at the same time. Babe Ruth was pitching well, and then he would start hitting, and his hitting became so good that he stopped pitching and just put up ungodly numbers offensively and became one of the greatest baseball players of all time. That's the only comp. Nobody has done what Shohei Ohtani is currently doing, which is putting up an MVP caliber year just on offense. If he was just playing offense, he'd probably be the leader for MVP this year because he would probably be playing the outfield. He'd be leading the league to win MVP. And if you're just pitching, he's up there in the Cy Young conversation. At a minimum, he's a top 3 guy in the Cy Young conversation. So I just hope everybody realizes, and it's kind of the point of this entire segment that I have been doing for going on 5+ years, is This Week in Shohei Ohtani News. The point is to let everyone know what he is doing, what we are witnessing, because I don't want to look back in 50 years saying, I covered the game of baseball, but I didn't talk about Shohei enough. And if there's anybody in the world out there that is able to say, I cover baseball and I do talk about Shohei Ohtani enough, I like to think that it's me, that I am talking about him enough. Let's get into this week, what we saw from him. We're going to talk about him offensively, and we are going to talk about him on the mound because once again, for quite a few starts in a row at this point, 4 or 5 starts in a row, we have now seen Shohei Ohtani at the plate while he is starting on the mound. It was getting close to it being a rarity this year. He was pitching so well, but his offense was struggling, so Dave Roberts was keeping him out of the lineup. That has not been the case lately. So we're going to talk about his offensive game, and we are going to talk about mostly how he pitched on the mound and that start. Offensively, coming into this game, in his last 24 games prior to this, he's hitting .411. .411 coming into this game, while also being 4-0 on the mound with a 0.38 ERA. I digress. I've talked about this year enough. Anyway, this game offensively, his first at bat, he led off the game. They were on the road in Pittsburgh. First at bat, he ended up striking out. Punches out in his first at bat, and then comes up his second at bat of the game and hits a ball to left field that it certainly looks like has a good chance of getting out. And Brian Reynolds, the left fielder for the Pirates, goes up and over the fence to rob Shohei Ohtani of a home run in his second at bat. So comes up literally inches short there. He did end up talking about this at bat. I love during this episode, I always, after we talk about his pitching, show you his comments from after the game. And he did talk about this at bat and the result and what he thought was going to happen. But gets robbed of a homer in his second at bat. And his third at bat, he strikes out once again. So he's 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts, 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts, albeit with a home run robbed. In his fourth at bat of the game, he popped out into left field, so he's sitting there 0 for 4, and that at that point you're a little bit down in the dumps because the start didn't exactly go how you want, and then he's 0 for 4 at the plate. Well, he comes up late in the game in the 9th inning for his 5th at bat of the game and hits an opposite field 2-run homer, and I say this all the time. When Shohei Ohtani is going at his best, he is hitting balls deep into that left center gap. And that's exactly where this went. And we know Shohei Ohtani is thriving right now at the plate and in a really good place offensively. And this home run shows exactly that. It could have been 2 home runs on the day, but it ends up being 1 home run to bring the Dodgers within a run. But a big homer for Shohei. And he needed it. He needed that homer after the day he had. I'm sure he was frustrated with how things went. His post-game comments kind of hinted at the fact that there was a bit of frustration. At the plate on Wednesday, 1 for 5 with a home run. Let's talk about his pitching. His pitching on Wednesday. It is Thursday. Every day, the day after Shohei Ohtani pitches, is when we do This Week in Shohei Ohtani News. And let's talk about how this week went for Shohei on the mound. Started off great. Started off incredible. First inning, gets himself in a little bit of trouble, walks a batter, gives up a hit, so you get a couple guys on base. 2 guys got on, but then he gets out of it. Couple of strikeouts there in the first inning to get out of it. Moves on to the second inning, walks another guy. So his command was a little shaky early on in the game. Walks his second guy, and then also after he walks the guy, was able to start a double play, but he messed that up, cost himself a double play by taking Mookie Betts off the bag. Luckily, Mookie made a pretty good play to get the out at first base anyway, but a fly ball to center field did end up getting him out of that second inning. On to the third inning for Shohei. Hits Brian Reynolds with 2 outs. This is immediately after Brian Reynolds robbed him of a home run. So his next at bat, very unintentional. This was unintentional. It wasn't even a fastball, nor would he intentionally hit someone. But he did unintentionally hit Brian Reynolds in the foot after he robbed him of a home run. Ends up getting out of that inning as well. Fourth inning comes along. Tyler Callahan. And I want everybody to put yourself in the shoes of Tyler Callahan here. Tyler Callahan had just gotten called up to the big leagues, had just gotten his first big league hit a couple of days ago, does not have a major league home run, comes up to face Shohei Ohtani and hits an absolute bomb out of the stadium in Pittsburgh into the Allegheny River for his first career home run. And yes, unfortunately, Shohei gives up a run at this point. But I do want everybody to put yourself in the shoes of Tyler Callahan and just think how cool and how special of a moment that is for him to not just have your first home run. It was your first home run off of the greatest player ever, and you hit it so far that it went into the river out of the stadium, and you were actually able to sit there and admire the home run from home plate because you hit it so far and you knew it was getting out. Really special moment for Tyler Callahan. Already, your first MLB homer is one you will never forget. But to have this one off of Shohei in the way that it did happen is certainly a moment that Tyler Callahan will never forget. So congratulations to Tyler Callahan for a really cool moment hitting his first big league home run. That happened in the fourth inning. So that was the first run of the game given up by Shohei. Immediately gives up a double after that, so back-to-back extra base hits, but he did get a strikeout to end the fourth inning. So he's through 4 innings, 1 run given up, onto the 5th inning. This is where, and I mentioned it last show after his last start. I hadn't seen a ton of people talking about what I saw during the start prior, which was him walking into the dugout and kind of looking at his finger a little bit. And it became a more of a talking point this start. It once again looked at his finger. Clearly, it is now known he is dealing with a blister issue, and they talked about it during the game. They are monitoring it. Dave Roberts said it's something they've been keeping an eye on for his last 4 starts or so. And it was very humid and hot in Pittsburgh, so humidity doesn't help. And I definitely noticed he kept going to that finger. It's not a positive. It's not something that is helping him by any means. He, again, I talk about his comments. I'm going to talk about his post-game comments, but he was asked about the blister. He continues to say that it's not an issue. I don't know if I necessarily believe that it's a complete non-issue. I do believe it's bothering him a little bit. I just don't think Shohei's ever going to be one to say, it is bothering me, I'm coming out. That's just not in his nature, so he's going to continue to say it's not bothering him. Anyway, gets through the 5th, gets through the 6th inning. So we're through 6 innings, 4 hits allowed, just 1 earned run. That's a good start. As we've talked about, he is part of a 6-man rotation. He's not going to get the innings he needs necessarily, so he needs to keep pushing that extra inning. And his pitch count wasn't exactly super high, so he did end up going back out for the 7th inning. Goes back out. 3rd time this year he has pitched into the 7th inning, all 3 times since the start of May. He didn't do it a single time last year, and he's done it 3 times since May this year. So he is obviously feeling great on the mound, and the arm feels good. 7th inning, he gets himself into some trouble. It's a leadoff walk, so you get a runner on base to lead off the 7th. Already you're just hoping he can get through the 7th and then a leadoff walk, and you're thinking, oh no, let's get through this. And then a swinging bunt. So a little bit of misfortune here. Swinging bunt down the 3rd baseline. So you end up with 1st and 2nd, nobody out in the 7th inning. Immediately following that, gets a called strikeout, called strike 3, and you start to think, okay, this is good. Next batter, called strike 3 once again for strikeout number 6 on the day. And then you start thinking pretty positively. You think, I feel pretty good about this. Comes up the next batter, 2 on, 2 out. And this at bat is a bit frustrating. There's a couple pitches that end up being very borderline to the point where Shohei looked a little frustrated, looked like he wanted to challenge himself. He talks about this post game as well, but he did not end up challenging, ended up trusting his catcher, Dalton Rushing, who he said, I like to put my trust in the catcher and let them handle things. But this was the first time all year that Dalton Rushing had caught Shohei Ohtani on the mound. It hadn't happened before. So there's not necessarily that trust that Shohei has with Will Smith. Dalton Rushing did not end up challenging the pitches that Shohei wanted to be challenged. He ends up behind in the count and then does give up a 2-run double down the line to end his outing. A couple of runs score. So it is 3 runs given up. He ends up leaving the game with a run on second. That run does end up scoring, but via an error from Max Muncy. So it did not end up counting as an earned run against Shohei. So it does end up being 6 2/3, 3 earned runs against Shohei Ohtani in this start. And I was getting this feeling from, I end up with a lot of comments when Shohei does things or on YouTube or Twitter or wherever it might be. And it sort of felt like after he gave up those runs, like it was doomsday. Let me make a couple points. 6 2/3, 3 earned runs, still a quality start. A quality start is an actual metric in Major League Baseball. It's not me just saying quality start. Quality start, 6 or more innings, 3 or less runs. So it was a quality start on the mound for Shohei Ohtani, and he still leads Major League Baseball with the lowest ERA for a starting pitcher at 1.06. It is the first time all year that a game has ended with Shohei having an ERA over 1.0, and it is just barely over that. So here we sit, June 11th, 1.06 ERA, and you know what? If you were to flash back to the beginning of the season and said on June 11th, Shohei would be 11 starts into the year with a 1.06 ERA, you'd be like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. So don't get a little down in the dumps that for the first time all year, he gave up 3 earned runs in a start. That is what happened, 6 2/3, 3 earned, but his ERA is only 1.06. After every game, I stick around and watch his comments and listen to the interview and the translation through his translator, Will. But a lot of comments are asked, and I love telling you guys his answers because it always ends up being pertinent to things that we have talked about throughout the show. First up, they asked about his blister. They asked about what they were seeing on his finger, and on his blister, he said, no issues. It hasn't been affecting my performance. Last couple of at-bats, I wish I got some calls my way. That is the part that I wish I could have changed a little bit. So he's referring to, it's a non-issue, he says, but clearly I do think it's a little bit of an issue. Anyway, says it's a non-issue, and really he's just more focused and frustrated on the last couple of at-bats where he didn't get some calls and he wanted to challenge, didn't end up getting challenged, which ended up being the next question. Shohei on wanting to challenge pitches on his own, because you could see him a couple times. He actually started to go to his hat and didn't. And he said, I got really close to doing a challenge. I got really close to doing a challenge. I usually let the catchers handle it, but looking back, seeing how important that moment was, I think I could have done a few challenges. So a bit of, I think, probably frustration for Shohei, because that is what he got behind in that count, and that's what led to the double down the line. He then was asked about pitching into the 7th inning, if there was any fatigue. He said, going into the 7th, my pitch count was pretty low, so I don't think so. After the 2 outs, he got 2 guys on. After the next 2 outs, he said, I felt pretty good. It was just the missed execution on that 3-0 pitch. He was then asked about his home run being robbed in the 3rd inning. He said, that felt pretty good off the bat. I thought it was going to be a home run, and looking back, it was, and the left fielder made an incredible catch. Lastly, he was asked on pitching to Dalton Rushing for the first time this year. He said, I shook a few times more than usual. I think that's normal given that I haven't worked with him. It's something I just have to have some conversations here and there. We have to be on the same page. Those were Shohei's post-game comments. This is me reading into it. Nothing from Shohei here. Those were all of his comments. I think he was maybe a little bit frustrated pitching to Dalton Rushing as opposed to Will Smith. I think he's super comfortable with Will Smith. I think he is a creature of habit. He likes doing the same things. He loves having a routine, and Will Smith is his routine, being back there behind the plate. And on top of that he ends up shaking a few more pitches, meaning they're not necessarily on the exact same page. That's fine. It is to be expected that with a new catcher, you're not perfectly in lockstep together. But then in the 7th inning, the non-challenged pitches, I do think Dalton Rushing has gotten better back there behind the plate with challenging pitches, but Will Smith is fantastic at it. I do think some of those pitches would have been challenged. I do think Shohei wanted to challenge. We could see it. It was interesting. There were 2 pitches that Shohei wanted called. It did end up being a strike, by the way. You could see him on the one that was definitely a strike, ended up almost going to his hat himself, but again decided to trust Dalton Rushing that it wasn't. I wish he hadn't, because he was correct. I do wish he had challenged. So maybe a little bit of frustration, and I do imagine going forward Shohei is going to be pitching to Will Smith is what I do think happened. In the end, 6 2/3 innings pitched, 6 hits given up, 3 earned runs, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts, and 102 pitches on the mound, bringing his season to 6-2 on the mound with a 1.06 ERA, a 0.84 WHIP, 73 strikeouts, and 67 2/3 innings pitched on the mound. What a fantastic year on the mound. And at the plate, 299, a 940 OPS, 6 stolen bases, 12 homers, around that 300 mark. Offensively, he's been fantastic. And unfortunately, he did leave the game with still a lead, and the Dodgers blew that lead, so he didn't end up getting a win on the mound. It was the largest blown lead in almost 2 years for the Los Angeles Dodgers. So despite a quality start, no win on the mound for Shohei. A good week. Not a fantastic week. He was good on the mound, not great, and he's continued to thrive offensively and just hit his 13th homer of the year, and he's rolling at the plate offensively. Again, my point with this entire show this week in Shohei Ohtani news, and the reason I say we are watching the greatest season ever, and I want to explain that, is because my point is always to let you guys know what we are watching is something that we will remember forever. We are watching the greatest baseball player of all time in his prime, and I want to talk about that to anybody and everybody that will ever listen, and that is the goal of this show this week in Shohei Ohtani News, which comes out every week the day after he pitches, which he's typically been pitching on Wednesdays this year. I hope you all enjoy it. Please click that subscribe button right here in the corner. That does really help. Leave a comment. I love hopping back in the comments and talking to you guys. I always do it every episode. I love continuing the conversation from the episode. And subscribe on YouTube, Flippin' Bats Pod. We can watch video of everything throughout the week, which we do. But if you're just listening, Apple, Spotify, wherever, check it out there. Make sure you follow. But check out and subscribe to the YouTube channel and leave a comment there. All that stuff really does help. And we are on all social media at Flippin' Bats Pod everywhere. That does it for this week in Shohei Ohtani News. Thank you all for watching or listening. We will be back on Saturday with Smoltz, as we have John Smoltz on the show every single week. But until then, you can go back and watch the Power Rankings. The Monday episode, we talked about Roki Sasaki and how he has figured it out, my friends. Click that right here. Check that out. But until Saturday with Smoltz, my friends, that does it for everyone's favorite segment this week in Shohei Ohtani News. Until next time, find your bat and flip it. Peace.